Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday YouTube channel. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel is for heart-centered leaders just like you. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. These interview sessions are sponsored by our great friends at Elevate Online Marketing. On episode 203, I'm joined by Eliza VanCort. Eliza is an acclaimed speaker, best-selling author, empowering mentor, rule breaker, rule maker, and unapologetic space claimer. Her first book, A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space, Stand Tall, Raise Your Voice, and Be Heard, was published in May 2021. And in a few days became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. We have a great conversation around what it means to claim space, how we can help women claim more space, and how men can help in that journey too. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It's episode 203 with Eliza VanCort. Eliza, welcome to the Always Best Than Yesterday podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Very, very good. For the benefit of those watching on YouTube, please do lift that mug up again.
Oh.
I can do anything if I concentrate hard with my lady brain. I know that you've got a number of like merched up superhero vibe mugs.
I do. I should have brought down my crazy feminist bitch mug, but I just have this one today.
What is it about superhero vibes, superhero energy that really inspires you?
I don't know. You know, I actually, my nephew joined my family when he was in high school, and he had kind of a rough time. And I think there's something about superheroes that just make us feel like there's a greater thing in the world that we can aspire to be to make the world better. And that, you know, maybe some superhero could save us if we're in trouble. Like it just sort of lends a feeling of magic. And also I was a kid who spent a lot of time in my imagination as a kid.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my escape. And I first I wanted to be I wanted to be Lois Lane, but then I was like, nah, I want to be Wonder Woman. What am I doing? Wrong call.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember hearing someone talk about the differences and the similarities between like superheroes and villains, and yet they both have like these backstories. They both have something in their backstory, and the superhero kind of uses that pain for good, almost like wanting to give back, to serve, to help humanity. And yet something happens to the villain, and they use that to have their hearts harden, and they take that out on all of those around them.
Absolutely. I mean, I always end my talks to young people by saying, you know, when you do claim your space and you're feeling empowered, you're like a superhero. But remember, superheroes don't just fly because they like the view. They fly because they have the power to help.
Oh yeah, come on. And it's always a reminder, isn't it? It's that you know, our gifts and our skills, our talents, they're in part for us because they feel good while we use them, but they're primarily for those in the world who need them.
Absolutely. I mean, I kind of believe the world needs people with, you know, I mean, I'm going to do a lot of superhero quoting apparently, but my nephew loves Spider-Man, and, you know, the whole idea of with great power comes great responsibility is not a joke. It's a real thing.
Yeah. So you've just said the words crazy feminist bitch. I know that's a bit from your book, Claim Space. And I'd love to know, you know, what's brought you, because you know, when we write our first book, I mean, I haven't written a book yet. So I guess there's that, if I can write about anything, what's it going to be? Claim Space is what you've devoted your words and your creation to. Why claiming space?
Well, we're going to dive right in here.
Let's go.
So when I was younger, I had a mom who was absolutely wonderful. According to all reports, she was a really devoted mother. And then when I was about 4.5, she became paranoid schizophrenic, and my father got custody of me, and she wasn't really okay with that. So she kidnapped me, and there was a national APB out on me. The police were looking for me. And she actually ended up kidnapping me 3 times. And one of the times we hitchhiked across the country by truck, from truck stop to truck stop to truck stop, from New York to California. And what happened on that trip made me start to conflate invisibility with safety. So I really just felt like if I could just be invisible, I would be okay. And slowly I started to realize being invisible wasn't safe. It was really dangerous. And I kind of believe that I've said this before, but I really do believe you lose small pieces of your soul every time you give up your power. And so for me, I felt like, you know what, the way that I can get back to me is to step into my power. I didn't really figure that out until I actually had a near death experience where I had a head injury. And I really had to build my communication back. And that's when I kind of came up with the concept of claiming space, which I can go into if you want. But that's when I realized the safest thing you can do is not to be invisible, it's to step into your power.
Yeah, it's powerful. I know that you dedicate the book to your mum and telling the story and in a way that maybe she couldn't, and honoring that, which is beautiful. And it was 2014, wasn't it? The accident you talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah, take us back to then.
So when my son is a big cyclist, so we're a big cycling family. My son was actually, I'm going to brag because I'm a mother. He was a 3-time national collegiate cycling champion.
Nice.
So we are hardcore riders in this family. So we follow the rules. I was doing everything right, going through an intersection, and somebody was on their phone and they violated my right of way. And I remember looking at them and thinking, oh, you're not drunk. You don't have delayed reaction time. You have no reaction time because you don't even know I'm here. And it wasn't until my shadow went over her face that she looked up at me and was like, you know that I know that you know that I know that we're going down. So I ended up hitting the car. I hit both sides of my head. I got a bilateral brain injury and a subdural hematoma. In fact, I woke up from the accident and I thought, something smells great. And I walked downstairs. My kids were eating dinner. And I said, how did you guys pull this off? I just got hit by the car this morning. And my ex-husband, John Paul, said, oh, you've been awake for a week. And I had no idea. So that began a very long process of me rebuilding my communication brick by brick by brick, because not only could I not remember anything, so I'd go to bed, I'd remember all my day, I'd wake up, half my day would be gone. But even once I felt most of my memory was back, I called a friend and I said, why is everyone acting so weird? And she said, oh no, they're not acting weird. You're acting weird. Your communication shot. You're talking like a stoned third grader. I didn't know what that was, but I ended up, I knew it wasn't good. So I started to rebuild my communication really from the ground up. And eventually one of the things I noticed was communication isn't just about your physicality and your voice. It's about this energy. And I kind of broke down that energy into 5 parts, which ended up being the 5 parts of my book.
And, if I understand your background well enough, it's in acting, and, communication's a key part of acting. That must have been a real challenge to try and wrestle with.
Yeah. And actually my background, I went to school for political science. And then after I graduated, I then did a 2-year acting program. And both of those things, believe it or not, are about how do you communicate ideas. And so, yeah, my communication had always been my strength. It had been my livelihood.
Yeah.
And I was acting teacher, for 20 years, and it was devastating. I actually went into my bed after I realized I wasn't communicating well. And I thought, maybe I just won't ever get out of bed. Maybe I'll just stay here. And then I realized, I actually thought to myself, I've been through so much. I'm not going to let some lady on her cell phone be the thing that wrecks me. That's not happening.
Right. Yeah. Hey, my friends, I hope you're enjoying the interview so far. Just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know that we are in the middle of our first cohort of Good Fathers, a 6-week group coaching program for dads. It is my heart to create a space for these good men, to leave them better for those who call them dads. We're having some intentional, purposeful conversations that I can see the men in front of me are transforming in front of my eyes. They are having conversations that they've never had with anyone else, and it is powerful. and it is going to help them be much more loving and intentional fathers, intentional partners. And because I have such undying belief in the power of this group, I am bringing about a second cohort. Starting on Monday, the 9th of January 2023, we're going to kick off with cohort 2. If you are a dad that wants to be even better for those who call you dad, then head over to the website abty.co.uk/goodfathers. The link is in the show notes. Have a look, and it'd be my honour and privilege to have you come and join us and other good men from around the world as we journey in what it means to be a good father. Here we go. Back to the interview. That's really powerful. Was there a healing process around that forgiveness and anything like that you had to go through?
Oh, for the woman who hit me?
Mm.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, it was very interesting during the affidavit because we went to court.
Mm.
She had actually posted right before she got in her car. We figured out the timeline. She posted on Facebook a picture of a woman looking out the window of her car. And the caption was, "You call it road rage. I call it aggressively maneuvering around a-holes who don't know how to effing drive."
Oh.
Then she got in her car, got on her phone, and hit me. Then she proceeded to post on her Facebook page about drunk driving and the joy of drunk driving afterwards. So, for me, I think forgiveness needs to be, sometimes it doesn't have to be earned, but I feel for her. I truly do. Because when I saw her when we were doing the depositions, she just looked like a very sad person. But I don't think that it's something that I can forgive. Although it did actually, in many ways, in the long run, enrich my life in a way that was completely unexpected and beautiful in some ways.
Yeah. Claim space. You said there were 5 parts to that. Where do we go? Where do we journey through claiming space? I guess first and foremost, I'd love to know why it's important. Why bother? Why is space something that needs to be claimed to begin with?
um I think that really you can't live a full life if you are making yourself small for the world or for another human being. And I think a lot of our journey in this life, at least for me, is, did I have a good time? Did I have joy? And did I do something to make the world just a little better? Was my footprint positive, even in the smallest way? And I don't think you can do that because it's like being on that airplane. Like, they always say, put the oxygen mask on yourself. If you can't be in your own power, how can you possibly help anyone else? And that's a very important thing for me. I'm not a religious person. So for me, I believe this is a one-shot deal. So when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be able to look back and say, I left the place a little better. And I think that's why, for me, claiming space is so important.
I know you have a particular heart for women claiming space too, I guess. What are some of the ways with which women have struggled to claim their own space?
Well, I mean, historically, women have been a class of people who have not had any power. White women have had by proxy power through white men, but that is a false power, really, and so I think that when, my John Paul, my ex-husband, who's still a very good friend of mine, used to be a Baha'i. And the Baha'is have this beautiful phrase, this idea that humanity is like a bird. And if one wing is too strong, it just can't fly right. And so I don't think that sexism and patriarchy just impacts women. I think it impacts all genders. And if we want a better world, we need the marketplace of ideas to include everyone. And so for me, that is a very low-hanging fruit and something I can relate to. Really, I'm very concerned with all injustice for all humans, but as a woman, my perspective allows me to have a little bit more impact, I think, talking to other women because I am a woman.
Yeah. Just writing that down. That's really powerful. That bird analogy. It's
Yeah.
so it's a great visual. I like that. With, you talk about a lot of this is, the tools. I saw you speak on your TEDx,
Hmm.
talk about this revolution, um, of this women claiming space, and that
Hmm.
the main tool of that revolution is communication.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Yeah. I think I should have actually, now in hindsight, I should have said the first step is communication.
Hmm.
I don't think it's the main tool, but I think nothing can come if you don't have that under
Mm.
control first, to a certain extent. And I don't mean you need to communicate in a one rigid way. So for example, Stephen Hawking communicated very well, and he didn't have really facility over any of his
Hmm.
physicality or his voice. Different cultures communicate differently. But I do think if you want to be able to convey ideas that are important, you want to be heard, then you need to be able to communicate those ideas. It's not
Mm.
just your content. And that's actually why a lot of my focus and what I love doing so much is going in and helping people communicate, because there are so many people with brilliant ideas and they just can't get them out there in a way that people hear them. And so we're
Mm.
losing genius.
Mm.
And that's a shame for all of humanity.
It really is. And how many great contributions to society don't get unearthed because of that? Is it is it confidence? Is it belief? Is it allyship? Like,
I mean, for me, I've kind of broken it down into 5 parts.
yep.
I mean, to start with, my idea of what claiming space is, I always say to claim space is to live the life of your choosing unapologetically and bravely.
Mm.
And bravery to me, I think, is grossly misunderstood, or at least the way I like to think of what bravery is. I like to
Yep.
define words all the time and redefine them. But I think bravery isn't the absence of fear. I think
Hmm.
that's ludicrous.
Hmm.
I always say, if you saw some dude like running onto a field with a sword and he's like, I'm not afraid. It's like, you're insane then. There are
Mm.
pointy things out there. But bravery is really terror meets action.
Mm.
That's what bravery is being really afraid and doing what you
Mm.
need to do anyway. And that is how you claim space. And the 5 aspects, if you want, I can kind of tell you what they are, because to
Yeah.
me, that's what I have found makes a person who can do it really well.
Yeah. Let's go for it high level, and let's encourage people to go and check out the book.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one is your physicality and your voice. Very basic. You can watch it on my TED Talk, little tips.
Hmm.
And it's important. Little changes can make a big difference. The next one is building community. People who build
Mm.
community are really good at claiming space. And that includes getting anti-mentors out of their life.
Hmm.
Because if you
Hmm.
have someone poisoning your community, it's hard for it to be healthy.
Yeah.
The next one is, what are you carrying? I actually have a very different idea than most people about your stuff. I hear all the time in pop psychology, and I hear people say you have to work through your issues. I just think that's ludicrous. Like, nobody ever gets over anything, I think. But I think what we can do is integrate our issues.
Mm.
So for me, I think of it like, we have these boulders we carry around with us, and they can weigh us down, and they can make us not be able to claim space. But if we work on them, we can get them really small, like a pebble that goes in your pocket, and you touch it and you go, oh, I lived through that.
Mm.
I learned from that. I won't do that again, or I'll do things differently, or all those things, right? Or I had this terrible loss and how sad, but I'm glad I don't forget it,
Mm.
And so for me, we got to get our stuff down to pebbles, which are useful to have. And then, how to protect yourself from aggressors, very, basic stuff like interruptions, mansplaining, sexual harassment,
Hmm.
and then, family, microaggressions. And then finally, intersectionality. I found that people who hung out with people who looked different than them
Hmm.
tended to do much better. And particularly if they were white,
Mm.
because I think there takes a tremendous amount of humility to hang out with people of color if you're white, because you will mess up
Mm.
all the time,
Mm.
all the time. And you have to be able to say, oh, thank you, please teach me,
Mm.
or I'm sorry, I'll do it differently. And my friend Alma Derricks, who wrote the foreword to my book, actually said to me, it's sort of like going to another country. She said, if you never leave to another country, you don't learn about other cultures. How are you ever going to grow and learn? And so those 5 things, people who mastered them, because I also believe mastery is impossible, but people who were mindful of them tended to have this power about them that was very, very hard to match. And it was very, and it was transformative.
With the first step that you said around the communication, one of the things I heard you say is that women tend to speak faster as a general. So you talk about the importance of silence, but one of the things I really picked up on, which is you said speaking faster is a disempowering speech pattern. And I thought
Yeah.
that just really shifted in my mind because, you talked in the talk about how, most speakers talk about just ranging the delivery, going faster, then going slower, and, to really keep people engaged. But that doesn't really work for women because of the speed that they talk about. So yeah, speaking faster is a disempowering speech pattern.
Yeah. And it's not that you speak fast some of the time. I mean, I'm Italian and Jewish. We are fast speaking people, especially my Italian side. You wouldn't believe how fast they talk. But if it's all the time, if you're always speaking really fast, if there's never a break, you're just going, what it connotes is nerves. When people are nervous, they tend to have pressured speech. And so if you can learn to have moments where you slow down, it actually is quite powerful. But what I have found is that because of the societal pressures on women, we tend to speak more quickly for a plethora of reasons. And because of that, we can get in these grooves of real disempowered speech patterns. And unfortunately, that makes us less able to be heard.
One of the things that you and I talked about when we originally met each other was it was about my daughter. She's 7 years old, and my desire to be a good dad for her, my desire to help her claim her space, and you told me a story about your own badass dad.
Oh, about my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what story I told you about my dad, but I think I told a story about my my daughter. I think that was a story that I told you. I don't remember the dad story. I have so many badass dad stories though that I can't remember.
What's the importance of your badass dad on your journey, and how's that helped you?
I know. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, being raised by my dad for quite a while, it really, and having somebody in your life, having a father in your life that says, I expect you can go out and kill it, is really, really powerful. And while I think single moms can do it, I was a single mom for a while, there is something about a daughter hearing from her father that she can go out and change everything, that I think is really powerful. And often actually men, they have found, tend to tell little girls to be safe and be careful and don't take the risk, not because they don't believe in them, but because they're frightened for them.
Yeah.
And it's so important to give our daughters the message that we can do it. And actually, I had a very transformative experience, which I think we may have alluded to, about my daughter, which I was so happy I did. And it kind of changed her life. And she is a powerful young woman. And it was so important for her.
After we spoke, I wrote down 2 words to ask you about, and I can't remember the context. I literally wrote cloakroom conversation.
Cloakroom conversation. Oh, conversations in the bathroom.
Yeah, right. I don't know why I wrote that down.
I know exactly why you wrote it down.
Okay.
I almost called my book Conversations in the Bathroom. So, so basically, when I would give my talks, and this is also part of why I wrote my book, I would give the talks and then I go to the bathroom afterwards because you got to pee. And I'd be in there washing my hands, and these women would follow me every time to the bathroom. And one of them would kind of sidle up to me and they'd be like, okay, I got to ask you a question I didn't want to ask in Q&A. And I'd say, okay. And then they'd ask the question. And the next thing I know, we're having like a workshop in the damn bathroom. And and I realized that there aren't a lot of safe spaces for women.
Right.
And the bathroom is a safe space for women. And so this is where they felt they could ask the question they didn't want to. And part of my motivation for the book is I found that the questions they asked, whether I was in Hong Kong or Texas or Florida, they were about 50 of the same questions, and they actually fell almost perfectly, a fifth, into the 5 aspects of claiming space.
Yeah.
That's how you claim your space, by making sure you can do these things, these answers to these questions. And so I thought, you know, so much of the difficulty we have in our lives, we stay in the shadows with those difficulties. Men do as well. And I think we need to take them out of the bathroom, out of the darkness, into the sunlight. And that was part of my motivation for writing the book.
Yeah. And one of the spaces that you've really started to claim is TikTok.
I know, isn't that crazy? It's true.
What inspired you to create a TikTok account?
Oh, I didn't. I was so resistant to doing it. I did not do it. My youngest son, Lucian, was like, Mom, you got to do TikTok, seriously.
Yeah,
and I was like, Lucian, I'm not doing TikTok. I'm about to be 50. You're insane. And he was like, no, Mom, seriously, like it's the thing. And I thought, all right, fine, I'll do a TikTok. And I did a TikTok, and it was so bad that it went viral for how bad it was. It was so bad. And my daughter was like, oh God, Mom, you have to take that down. So then I left it up for a long time. Eventually I took it down because I was like, this is truly embarrassing. But I slowly started figuring it out. And then I did one TikTok about it. And then it just wasn't clicking for me. And then suddenly I thought, you know, I don't like the idea of motivational speaker, because I feel like that's someone who just motivates you and then pieces out. For me, I like the idea of like motivational teacher. And because I want to give people skills when I go do my talks and workshops. And so I thought I should just teach. So I started just taking bits of my book and just teaching people. And the first one on anti-mentors, the second one on anti-mentors went relatively viral, got almost 100,000 views. And I thought, oh, I can do this. I don't have to try to like play in the kid playground. Like I can just be my old several generations self and teach. And so it's been good. Although I will say TikTok has some serious problems with issues of race. And if you talk about any racism, you will be have a lot more trouble getting your content out. And that's something that I hope everybody can, you know, complain about to all the powers that be, if you have anybody that you know, because it's very much a way of, you know, controlling the stories. And if you control stories, you control narratives, or you control narrative, you control the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yes to that. And you know, I think having, you know, because TikTok's primarily young people's platform, isn't it? And I think one of the great things about having someone like you there is almost like you're there, almost like their relation. You're giving some tips to help them realize the behavior that they're seeing, that they don't know yet to be red flag, they don't know yet to be toxic. And here you come along with, oh, this behavior, they're doing this thing. And it's like, oh, like even with the straw man fallacy thing, which is, talk to us about the straw man fallacy.
Oh, the straw man fallacy is great. It's basically like where somebody, that one went quite viral. I think it was almost 3 million views or something. It's basically, it's a logical fallacy. And it's the idea that instead of arguing about the thing the person brought up, you bring a different element into the argument in order to basically sidetrack the argument. And so then the person argues about the new thing. So for example, I would say, you know, I don't really like the way you purposely embarrass me in front of your friends. And then the response is, well, you're always mean, you know? And then suddenly the expectation is, oh, now we have to argue about how, you know, and then you want, usually people say, I'm not mean, as opposed to, you know, what I always tell people to say is, you know, the issue is not whether or not I'm mean. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about it later. Right now, I want to talk about what just happened. And, you know, resisting getting sucked into a straw man argument is really a powerful thing.
And that's it, isn't it? You know, with the simplicity of seeing a TikTok video, you think, oh, I can start seeing that in relationships now and hopefully be better for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's my hope. I actually just did one that really resonated with people about finding your superpower.
Mm,
And what I said was, think about your anti-mentor. Think about all the words they said to make you small.
yeah.
That's your superpower,
Hmm.
because your anti-mentor really sees you and is afraid of your power. And so they take the thing that's strong about you and pathologize it. So for example, I was
Mm,
called a space cadet. My head was in the clouds. I couldn't, all these things. And I'm a writer and a thinker for my job. I am. My
mm.
head's always in the clouds, you know? So all of these things that we're told are weaknesses often are the strength that we really are carrying with us.
Oh, we need so many good people to be speaking that into us, don't we? You know, because like you say, if that's in the mind of a young person that never gets brought to the world, what a loss that is to that person and those who would have been served by it.
Totally. Absolutely. In fact, one of my friends is part of one of the tribes, the Native American tribes in the state. And
Mm,
in his tribe, he says that the way they identify how a kid is going to, what they're going to do when they grow up or whatever, is they look at the thing that drives the parent crazy.
right?
And they decide that that's actually the thing that will allow their kid to succeed, because it's the
Yeah,
thing they
yeah,
really are latching onto in a powerful way.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so my kid's kicking his football around the kitchen whilst I'm trying to cook, and my daughter's doing cartwheels in the living room. So,
right. There
so
you go.
that
I mean, my son was, riding his bike through the kickball game
right,
and
right.
they drove them crazy. Why are you letting your kid do this? And I was like, he doesn't even notice there's a kickball game. He's too involved in his bike, you know.
Yeah, that's so funny. I think that there's a time and a place to speak, and there's a time and a place to be quiet and silent, because I think there's a lot of noise out there. So there's certainly a lot of noise on social. How do we know the difference of when to claim space and speak and talk, and when to just stop talking?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of things through the lens of privilege.
Mm,
So for me, for example, one of the biggest lessons I ever learned was when to shut up when I'd messed up.
mhm,
And I think that's a huge lesson. And I used it I learned through the lens of race, but I apply it to almost everything now.
mhm,
I was talking to a friend, she's a Black woman. I screwed up. I don't even remember what I did. I think I blocked it out. It wasn't huge, but it was still pretty bad. And she said, that wasn't cool what you just did.
mhm.
And I said, no, 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 let me explain. And finally she said, Eliza, when a Black woman trusts you enough to tell you about her experience, you have one job, and that's to shut up and listen. And I thought, okay. So I really learned in that moment that, it doesn't really matter sometimes what my intention was.
Mm,
It's how did it land? And if it didn't land well for someone, you know, I should believe that. Now, do I want to change if somebody says, anytime you have a pink mug, I have an anxiety attack, you can never have a pink mug? I need to listen to that. I don't necessarily need to, decide to not have a pink mug, but I need to at least listen enough to understand what they're saying and hear them so I can make an informed choice on how I want to proceed.
yeah. Yeah. And with the crazy feminist bitch energy, the simplicity of the word feminism is this just belief that men and women should have equal opportunity, right? I
Yeah.
think that's my sim right.
Equal rights and opportunities. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly radical idea.
Right, right. Do you think that somehow feminism has come away from that simplistic definition? Is there an element of, trying to counteract that, to make the other wing stronger, shall we say?
I don't think so at all. Actually, I
Mhm,
think that that is a sort of myth that is being
mhm,
perpetuated by people who are afraid of equity.
mm,
That's what
mhm,
I think.
mhm,
Um, I mean, it's sort of like when people say, in this country, Black people are getting affirmative action for college. We need to stop it. And I'm really entrenched in academia because I do a lot of talks in academia. And I always say,
mm,
no, who gets affirmative action? White, wealthy kids whose parents went to the school. their legacies. And I know for a fact they're put in a pile that has a much lower standard than any Black person they will ever let in. So focus on the thing that's really getting in your way, that's truly unfair. And I think we create these mythologies often for groups that are trying to get equity, that they're trying to get too much. I have never yet seen that happen. And until I see all of these statistics which tell me otherwise, I'm going to say that that's sort of a misnomer.
Yeah, great. And I think one of the things that is a universal truth is that the world just needs more compassionate conversations.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. All of us do, because every single person has some sort of gift that someone else doesn't have, and is probably can help someone else, if you just pay attention.
How do men help?
I think that it's really about believing people, believing their experiences, and then just saying, how do men help? I actually think what you just did is how men help. Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to happen person by person by person. I think you can legislate some of it, but I think that, if you say, I don't know if you know this, but when I walk to my car, I pretend to be on the phone on a dark day because I don't want to be harassed, and it makes me feel more safe. You can say, well, you don't probably have to. I mean, there's, what are the probability? Or you can say, oh, what's it like to be like that? And how can I help? And then I can say, well, if you're ever sitting around and you see a man heckle a woman who's the only woman on the street, you can just say, hey, that's not cool. Like, I think it's one man at a time, just with any form of oppression, whether it's parents being unkind to their children, interracial, intergenerational, interwealth, all of the interclass, all of those things. I think it's really about hearing, believing, and then seeing, and then asking the question is, what can I do? And for everyone, it's going to be a little different in some ways.
Yeah, culture's messy. I think culture's messy. I think culture has done a couple of dangerous things over the last couple of decades. The glamorization of women and their bodies, putting them on, on a national newspaper on page 3 here in the UK, having a half naked body, for example, on available on every single newspaper. That has consequences, subtly and psychologically. And we've got a generation of men now that don't have to work hard for anything. It's all we've got a culture of comfort where we just swipe right or pick up an app or to deliver your food, and that has consequences of entitlement and lack of doing things that are honorable and noble and standing for the right things and being compassionate human beings, putting other people first. We're in a selfie generation, and if I'm focusing on self, I'm not focusing on anybody else. You start to look back, and this isn't, it's very easy to blame the individual at that level, but there are so many forces at play that maybe people don't take a step back and see and pay attention to.
Absolutely. And I actually think that part of how we do that is directly instructing our kids.
Right.
Not hoping they'll get it,
right,
but direct instruction. And, I can, if you want, I'll share one of my favorite stories at some point about how I was given advice about directly instructing my daughter that helped her. But I think so much of the time we kind of hope they're going to get it. And we don't realize actually the incredible power that we have. We can't do everything as parents. I mean, some things, we just can't control, but there's a lot that we can do to set our kids on the right path.
Yeah, I'd love to know that story.
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of my favorite stories. I share it with people with daughters all the time. So if you're listening and you have daughters, this is important. So my daughter, before she hit puberty, was a triathlete. She was really, really smart. She was doing great. And suddenly she hits puberty and she starts acting like she's clumsy. This is a girl who's a triathlete. She's not clumsy. She's pretending to run into walls. She's acting dumb. And my friend, who's a therapist, said, she's in trouble. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, let me explain something to you. And she explained it to me. And she said, now you go explain this to Ella. So I went and I sat down with Ella. And I said, Ella, I don't know if you've really thought about this, but before you hit puberty, the way that you and boys got their powers for what you did, like where you were picked on the kickball team, how smart you are, you got a lot of rewards for that. now that you're developing and you're going through puberty, boys are getting their power for what they do, and girls are getting their power for if the boys like them. So you're all trying to make yourself really small and non-threatening, including being clumsy and acting dumb, to get boys. And and that's a good short-term plan. It's really going to work in middle school. It will work, but it's not a great long-term plan. And she kind of looked at me like, yeah, whatever, mom. I'm like, whatever. You always say these things. And then about maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks to a month later, she came home and she said, Mom, you were right. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I was walking down the hall and these two boys were following me. And one of the boys said, I like a girl because she's smart, and laughed. And she said, and then she said, and the other guy said, and I like a girl because of her great personality, and laughed. And I said, do you think they wanted you to hear that? And she said, oh yeah, they were walking right behind me, so I would hear it. And I said, well, what do you think about that? And she said, it was mean. And I said, yeah, it was mean. And from that moment on, my daughter said, I'm not participating in this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And she ended up being this incredible activist. She was quoted in the New York Times for her activism in high school. She just was like, I reject that. I'm going to be my own person. And the interesting thing is her friend group is the most gender diverse friend group I've ever seen. She has 50% boys and girls and the boys who are friends with her now, she's in her 20s, the men, they are these incredible, smart men who want to be around smart women, and it's wonderful to see. It's just fantastic. So I think, direct instruction can really help, even if in the moment that we feel like they're not hearing anything we say.
That's it. But I think that's about passing on values. I think that's something that, one of the things, I've had a couple of parenting experts on the show in the last couple of months, and the things that they kind of allude to is that if we're not instilling those values in our kids, the values of our culture will shape the things that they hold dear and hold important to them. And that's definitely, for any of our listeners, is that don't leave that stuff to chance. Don't ever leave it to chance, because it will be someone out there on YouTube. It will be someone there in the hierarchy of school that's basically teaching your kid what's important, and not you.
Yeah. And I think there's a 5% chance they listen to like what we're saying at any given time. But I feel like that 5% could be the tipping point,
Yeah.
And even if they don't hear it then, they might hear it later.
Yeah, like you say, 3 to 4 weeks later, all right, mum. And sometimes is that, what does it mean to admit my mum or dad was right?
Right, exactly.
If she's right about this thing, what else is she right about?
Right. Oh no, there may be a point to some
Here
of the
goes
things.
the big domino. Yeah, it's knocked you down. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally, 100%.
One of the acknowledgements you make at the very end of your book, you talk about you can't do it with a one-woman army. You can't claim space with a one-woman army.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? And where do you start to build that village?
I feel like claiming space is not a selfish act. It just can't be. Claiming space has to be a collective act. And I think that I believe that networking needs to be redefined. I think we think of it as very mercenary, like I'm going to meet someone and get something from them, and then they'll give me stuff,
Right.
And I actually feel like when you network like that, people can smell it and it never works.
Yeah.
I think, however, it is good to have a large network of people. And so you should find people that you authentically think are wonderful and possibly doing things kind of in your sphere, because A, you're going to have things to talk about, and B, they might help you, and C, you might help them. And then, start to build your network. I think one of the best ways to build your network is to be a super connector, is to just connect people all the time who can help each other. Because then you have this web of people that you've helped that are all around you. And one day you might need a little bit of that web, but it doesn't even matter if you don't, because I believe it comes back to you eventually either way.
Yeah, and a big thank you to Kathleen Merkel. Kathleen is a super connector. She's the one that connected you and I. I think she had you on your podcast, and she was like, you sound like you'd have a great conversation with Ryan. And yet here we are.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. I have a word here at Always Better Than Yesterday, and you touched on it earlier. You said the words footprint, and my word is heartprint. I believe that when we come and bring of ourselves to the world, the things that we love, the things that we care about, the things that we are gifted with to help other people, I think we'll leave a heartprint where those around us are left better. What do you think your heartprint will be?
Hmm. Oh, wow, that's a great question. Um, I hope that I left the world in a place where women understand that in no way are they breaking any rules or doing anything that's negative if they're claiming their rightful bit of the space,
Mm.
that actually they're making the world better. And hopefully I'm making some women's lives better, who are then in turn making other women's lives better, who are then really helping all of us. I believe that everyone should be able to step into their power, everyone. And maybe I'll let a couple people, or hopefully several thousand, given the sales of my book, I hope, how it's going so far, really change their own lives. And that's important to me. And of course, my kids, I think if you don't do a good job by your kids, I don't know if anything else really matters.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the show, and really admire the desire to see women rise. I think that's really important. Again, my mum was single parent, raised three of us, and my mum's always had this kind of like spirit of just joy, optimism. Like she's been my role model, and fortunately she didn't. She came to one of my workshops once, and I asked her, how much would you have paid for that if you had to pay? She said, £10. You know what I mean? She really undervalued, because she hasn't really needed this personal development, self-development stuff, because I don't know, she just had something equipped, but many others aren't. Many others are out there that don't have that, and they are, like you say, making themselves small. They're shying away. They're not being heard, and as a result, many people who they have yet to meet don't get to benefit from all the goodness that they could have brought.
That's right. And that diminishes them and all of us, really. I really do believe when we rise together, we rise so much higher.
Yeah, that analogy of the birds is going to stay with me. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Where can people connect with you? Where can they find out more about your wonderful work and your viral TikToks?
Well, they can follow me on TikTok. It's Eliza VanCort. There's no U in court.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go to my website, Eliza VanCort, and all of the things. And actually, if you go to my website, that's how you can connect with I actually just started a course that I'm going to be capping soon, but I'm doing a course, and I'm doing, and I do workshops and talks and coaching, and I love it. I feel like the luckiest person in the world, and you can contact me through my website.
Bathroom workshops.
Yeah, I should do a bathroom workshop. That would be awesome. I think I kind of create that feeling in my workshops, though. Everyone has fun, it's not like uptight and sitting in rows, it's fun. So that's kind of one of my goals too, is, you can learn and have fun at the exact same time.
Absolutely. The metaphorical safe space, which I think we should all be trying to create for each other.
Absolutely.
My friend, thank you so much for your time. I'd be honored if you'd leave us with a final thought from your good self.
Sure. I guess what I would say to women listening is, you can't claim space if you don't believe you have the right to. So believe you have the right to claim space. We're over 50% of the population. We should be claiming over 50% of this space.
Do you have a final thought for men?
If you support women in their quest to claim space, we will all do better, not just women. That's real feminism.
Agreed. My friend, appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.